Hello, I'm Dan Jarrett. I'm an electronics technician here at LI-COR, and today we're going to be talking about general maintenance for the LI-610. Starting on the outside of the instrument, on the side panel here, there is a filter element, and this filter keeps the air clean. There's radiators immediately behind this filter element, and the filter keeps the radiators from getting plugged up. And the radiators are an important part of the system to maintain temperature control. Also, that provides good clean air for just general cooling of the instrument then as well. So a visual inspection can be made of the filter element, and there's a guard that holds it in place. And on the four sides there are tabs, so you can just pull it off, and then you can inspect the filter element. It can be cleaned if needed, or if the material has degraded and is falling apart, it should be replaced. So the filter and the guard can then just be snapped back into place. To gain access to the interior of the instrument, we need to remove the cover, and that can be done by removing the fill plug and then removing the fasteners that are on the top and side of the cover. Once the fasteners are removed, the cover can be lifted away. Let's look at some of the major systems in the LI-610. The flow of air through the instrument starts at the air inlet, and then that air passes through the filter down to the pump. The air exits the pump, and the flow can be controlled here with the flow control. Then the air will travel through the console here and out to the condenser block. The air exits here and enters the condenser block at the bottom. Then that air can flow through the condenser block and will exit at this port here, where it re-enters the console. Then it flows down to a splitter right in this area, and then that air can either exit output 1, or you can also adjust output 2 to have a second flow. Now let's look at the cooling system. Let's start with the reservoir, where you add water to the reservoir, and the pump sits right below the reservoir. So when the pump is active, then the water will begin to flow through the radiators. There's two elements. It enters here, exits, goes to the second element, and then exits here. The cooling fan sits right behind the radiators, and the airflow through the radiators will add energy or remove energy from that water. Next, the water exits here, and there's a coarse screen which will filter out any particles that may have built up in the system. Then that water exits and goes into the condenser. Let's look at the condenser assembly. The water enters the condenser assembly and passes through a block. It then flows to the other side of the condenser assembly and enters a second block with the water exiting here. There are thermoelectric elements, Peltier elements, that are sandwiched between the condenser block and the cooling block. And this is where energy is added or removed from the condenser block to control the dew point set point. So after the water exits the condenser block, it comes back into the reservoir in the instrument, and the cycle is completed. So in this step, we are going to replace the internal air filter. The air filter should be replaced at least annually, or it can be done more often if conditions would warrant. To remove the air filter, we need to release the collar on the quick connect, and that can be done by pulling this orange collar back away from the filter, and when it unlocks, it will slide off. You can also use a tool such as needle nose pliers and apply pressure to that ring and then pull the filter out of the quick connect. The filter has an arrow which indicates the airflow, so you want to install that in the correct position. So the air will be flowing from the inlet here and down to the pump, so we want to make sure that the arrow is pointing in this direction. And to install, you just need to press it into the quick connect and you'll feel it lock into place. Let's look at maintaining the water filter screen. So one of the problems that can happen is over time there may be corrosion that starts to happen in different parts of the systems, and this screen will prevent those things from getting lodged in your cooler blocks in the condenser. But if they're allowed to build up for too long of a time, it will begin to restrict the flow of water, and you may experience trouble with maintaining stability at a set point. So we recommend that you inspect this monthly and clean as necessary. So to clean the water filter screen, we recommend placing a towel or something to absorb the small amount of water that will come out of the system, and you can remove this large tubing from the hose barb. You may need to use some needle nose pliers to help push the tubing off the barbs and to get them to start moving. They're kind of locked into place. And once it starts to move, you can usually just pull it right off. And so at this point, there may be debris that will just fall out of there because there may be large particles that the screen stops, and as the small amount of water comes out, those particles may just fall out. So that may be all that you need to do. If the screen has more material in it, you might need to blow some compressed air through, and you can do that by removing this connection from the other side. You may want to place a towel under here as well to catch any water that might come out, and then you can blow compressed air through the screen to remove any additional particles. If you're having difficulty removing the blockage, you might need to remove the feed through here. So I'll demonstrate how to do that. You can use a 14 millimeter wrench to loosen the nut. and then the feed-through can be removed. To show you an example from a customer's instrument, you can see that this tubing is just coated on the inside with corrosion. And here's some of the larger diameter tubing, and it's just covered with corrosion. And you can see all the particles that are coming out of this tubing, and we're packing that screen tight and severely limiting the flow of water through the instrument. We recommend using distilled water, and you can add 15 to 20 drops of algicide to prevent algae growth from starting. And using good, clean distilled water will help to prevent corrosion from happening inside the instrument. There are further resources available on the LI-COR website, and if you have any further questions, please feel free to contact us.